women are pasul le'edus officially, but there are circumstances where Beis Din will take into a consideration the testimony of women. When men are not available to testify, and certainly in circumstances where we would not expect a man to be present in a certain situation, we certainly can accept the testimony of women. I had started mentioning to you yesterday that I had given a shiur on Wednesday night and about censorship on the internet, and in the context of that discussion, one of the arguments to be made is that when you're the head of a community, you have an obligation to abide by the standards of a judge. That's the position of a number of poskim, and in the course of discussing that, looked at a tshuva that was written in the early 1920s regarding whether women were kosher to vote in national elections. And this particular posek was of the opinion that they were not, but it was on the basis that women should not vote. Okay, but the argument that he made was that every voter is vested with sort of juridical rights, in the sense that when you are the head, when you're in charge of making decisions for your community, then you have to have the same jurisprudence as a judge. And since a woman can't be a judge, she's not allowed to be a community head. And by extension, he said, any person who votes is inputting into their community some kind of leadership role of deciding who's going to be the next leader, and therefore women should not participate in that. But clearly that's not how we come out in Psak Halacha, at least not in most Orthodox communities. There may be certain Orthodox communities that restrict women's leadership behavior for the reasons that are described over here. They're pasul le'edus and they're pasul for being a dayan, so maybe they're pasul to occupy a seat on the city council, and because they're not allowed to have surara, they're not allowed to have leadership positions. Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. When I came here, they asked me what my position was on women sitting on the board. I said, "What do you mean? What's my position?" Well, I couldn't even understand the question. And apparently, there's a lot of old school things that I encountered when I first came to the. Yeah. It's the generation behind. Yeah. Yeah. So the Gemara explains why. The Gemara says, "Nashim da'atan kalot," that three words that will haunt you if you misuse them, which is that women's minds are kalot. Now, what does the word kalot mean? It literally means light. But what it really means, and I mean this seriously, I don't mean this as a joke, is that the female psyche is not as stoic and detached from emotion as the male psyche is. The male psyche is, and this is an overgeneralization, of course. These are always overgeneralizations. But as a general rule, a male is able to be like the guy on Dragnet, just the facts, man. Yeah, or like Mr. Spock, just the facts, ma'am. I don't need any, right? I sometimes just had this the other day. I called up a woman and I asked her about something that needed to be done about a community resource, and then she went into this whole drama of this woman and that woman and this thing and that thing, and And I said, I don't need to get into the drama. I mean, I tried to be nice, but at some point and I apologized afterwards for being too short with her. But there's a comedian who says that's the difference between a man and a woman. A woman you say, how was your day, honey? And then she'll speak for 20 minutes and she'll tell you about this person and that person and da, da, da. And then you say to a guy, what did you do today? He says, I went to the store, I bought a tomato, it was good. And that's the end. Right? So that's the difference. And that's the reason why Chazal say Nashim Datan Kalot, is that how do we perceive reality? How do you and I perceive reality? And by the way, if you've been following some of the things that I said over the Yamim Noraim, especially Shabbos Shuvah, you note that our perception of reality is not accurate based on what real reality is. But when it comes to edus, when it comes to testimony, Hashem wants us to be very focused on the physical reality that we perceive. And men are able to focus more on that physical reality and relate that they perceive that happened with their senses. Women are more detached from the physical reality, which is why Chazal also say that women are more spiritually attuned, because they recognize that there's more to this percepted reality than meets the eye. Yeah, it's related to Sarah in this week's parsha. Lo tzachakti. She says, I didn't laugh. When she did laugh. So was she lying? No, she wasn't lying. Is that, she went into the whole thing, right? From her perspective, it wasn't really laughing, because when you understand where she's coming from and you think about all that she's gone through, and she's old, and it wasn't really laughter like you think it's laughter, and come up with the whole story, right? What was the episode with you?
She said, get rid of them, and you don't have to tell Abraham to get rid of them.
Well, sorry, yeah, but that's not. Yeah, I don't think that's an indication that there's. Yeah, she had better insight into the human condition, but that doesn't mean that doesn't make her into a better witness. It means that she is insightful into reality beyond the physical perceived reality. Okay.
So I understand the explanation with respect to witness, but is there also an aspect of sneers when it comes to leadership?
Yeah, right. So this is where you find a little bit of an intersection between the two issues. One is a woman cannot be a witness or a dayan, and then there's another issue that women cannot be in a rulership position because of melucha. Because the Torah says you may only place a male king over yourself and not a female, at least the way that it's interpreted in the Gemara. But I do feel that they're all intertwined. Mm-hmm. I feel that, and I don't think that it's only an issue of tznius. I don't believe that it's all, I think more is as far as a ruler requires a certain amount of stoic jurisprudence and a detached kind of ability to look at a situation completely objectively, which for certain situations is wonderful, right? And if we didn't have that male persona within society, we would never put up buildings and be able to create sewage systems and collect trash and all of these other things that just require complete objectivity, a complete detachment from any emotional responses, and just get the job done, right? That's a very male kind of. Jordan Peterson talks about this. He says, as much as people in society tout the feminine quality, but you need the masculine quality to build the world. You need that detachment from emotion in order to create a world that is structured and works, right? Right. You need engineers. You need construction workers. You need right. but that requires emotional detachment. So, on the other hand, women make better parents, and they're better caregivers, and all of these other things because of their because of the fact that their ability to perform and their emotional state are all intertwined. So they're more empathic and all of these other things, right? Okay, does it make sense, Joby? Yes, yes. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, that's true, right? But one could argue that her form of violence was an emotionally charged kind of violence. I guess you would say that. So yeah, it is possible for women to be extremely destructive, right? Sometimes even more destructive than their male counterparts, because they put not only their brain into it, but they put their heart into it also. Yeah. We've had Devora. We've had yeah, but was she really running anything? I don't know. Oh, is that right? I don't remember the history.
Parents were from, so.
Yeah.
Controversial, especially today.
Yeah. Well, how would this play itself out in modern times? I don't think that there's I mean, look, halachically speaking, right? Do we put women in roles of leadership? So Rav Moshe said, first of all, you should know that there's a machlokus in the Rishonim as to whether the Torah says, Som tasim alecha melech mikerev achecha, from amongst your brethren, you shall place upon yourself a king. The Gemara learns, me achecha velo me achosecha, from your brethren and not from your sisters, right? And that teaches me that it has to be a male. The machlokus in the Rishonim is, does that apply to other positions of leadership or only to monarchy? Yeah, so the Rambam says it applies to all positions of leadership, but the Rashba says that it only applies to the monarchy. And for the Rashba, therefore, it would be permitted for a woman to be a president of a shul or to be the head of a city council, and so forth and so on. And so Rav Moshe was asked this question: could a woman act as a mashgiach for a kashrus agency? And he said that under certain conditions she could, as long as she had a supervisor that she was reportable to. That was male. Yeah. And as a general rule, there's the jury is still out. The OU will not. The OU does have requirements about if you're an OU shul, who can and cannot be the president of the shul. The Young Israel movement also had requirements for a long time, and then they had to back down because the rule about women also applies to converts, even male converts. So does that mean that a convert can't be the president of a shul? So that created a whole controversy. They had to eventually withdraw that policy. Some OU shuls do allow women to be presidents of the shul. For example, Sharei Shemayim has had many women presidents. The policy of other, let's say, perhaps more traditional Orthodox shuls is to not allow women to be president. When I was asked my position on it, I said, there's a whole debate about it, but based upon the orientation of where the bayit is in the early 21st century, My ruling is that women can sit on the board. They can be any level of vice president that you like, as long as they don't have the role of president that is shared only by one woman, then that's fine. So you could have women co-presidents, I said. You could have one male president and one male president, one female co-president, or you could have two female co-presidents. As long as you don't have one female president, you're certainly not in violation of any rules, at least, according to the Rambam. But
women presidents would be.
it's because it's not a monarchy. It's not analogous to the case of monarchy.
Along the same lines, a woman not learning Persian.
I mean, as far as the issue of nashim dat and kalos, the reason why the Gemara says that kol hamalamed is bito Torah kilu malamda tiflus. If you teach your daughter Torah, it's as if you're teaching her folly, because again, the attitude being is that she doesn't have the analytic qualities of cold analysis of Torah Sheba'al Peh in the same way that a man does, right? In other words, there's a certain style of analytics that are employed when you're studying Gemara that require a certain emotional detachment, and a woman, when she's learning Maseches Nida, or she's learning Maseches Gittin, she's going to be thinking about the poor woman who's getting divorced, and look what she's being left with financially, and it's not fair, and she's an aguna. Or when she learns Yavamas and learns about different co-wives, she's going to say, I don't understand, how could two women be married to one man and then get along with each other? And she's going to insert all of the drama of real life situations instead of being able to look at the analytical realities of a Maseches Yavamas or well, no, I think they're interrelated. I think
I understand that more versus.
Well, it's
go to court. I can't testify, that's one is emotional. One is they're emotionally a different way, and one is you're saying mentally that they're not capable.
No. I'm saying, yeah. They're women have equally intelligent IQ as men do, but a woman will many times, as a generalization, women have a tendency to insert the real life human condition into situations where the Gemara may say, put aside all of the drama of real life and just look at the case. A woman has difficulty doing that. Of course. Why? Because the Gemara doesn't say it's usher to teach your daughter Torah. It says it's if you're teaching her folly. So you have to be careful. You have to be selective. But it doesn't say categorically that it's usher. I don't think it says categorically that it's usher. I have to look back at the language of it. Rashi learned with his daughters. There are many women who have the capacity to emotionally detach themselves, right? And are able to learn Gemara quite well. There are many women who are doing Daf Yomi even in our own shul, and that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're asking on what basis did Chazal say it, I'm telling you that there is a reality to it. It's not like Chazal were provincial or they weren't Neanderthals. In other words, as much as we would like to think that we have advanced as a civilization today, to suggest that there's no difference between men and women in the way they think is overlooking a basic reality, of the difference of the genders. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is not politically correct, but it's correct. Okay.
say these things at all.
It's hard to say these things. Okay, maybe I have to delete the recording. Okay.
I didn't hear anything. Did anyone else hear anything?
Okay. I don't even know who's on the. Oh, it's just Shmuel and me on the. Okay. 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 So, what was the next thing that we saw? That the Rav Shulchan Aruch had said that when you receive testimony, at least one of the dayanim on the Beis Din has to be very well versed in Hilchos Eidus to know how to cross-examine the witnesses without leading the witness, and that's why our sages tell us, "Hevi zohir bidvarecha." Be careful with your words. Shema mitoch divarecha yilmedu l'shaker, because sometimes when a judge is not prudent and he says certain things in front of the witnesses will learn how to give false testimony. And he laments the fact that more recently there are less educated dayanim who have accepted testimony, and they are causing corruption to ensue. Okay. Yilmedu l'shaker, ma'ayamin pirish metilin ema al ha'idim b'fnei hakol. Before you call upon witnesses to testify, let's say in a Beis Din, you have to instill them with fear. In other words, intimidate them to make sure that they understand that the stakes are high. And you notify them of the severity of one who testifies falsely. Because the Gemara says that through false witnesses, God brings famine and pestilence to the world. Uboshes hameid ba'olam hazeh va'olam haba. And imagine the humiliation that you will experience both in this world and the next when you are exposed. B'shehu bazui be'enei sochrav, and you will be considered to be garbage in the eyes of anyone who wants to hire you. Meaning that even if you've been paid off a lot of money by someone who's paying you to testify falsely, don't you realize that they look at you as a lowlife? Even the person who's asked you to testify on their behalf, they will have absolutely no respect for you. Achar kach motzim es kol hanoshim lechutz, chutz mehabaldin u'meshayrin es hagodol shebe'idim. And then they tell everyone to vacate the court, except for the judges and the litigant, and u'meshayrin es hagodol shebe'idim, the litigant or litigants, and we leave over the older of the two witnesses. We will ask him, how do you know that Shimon owes money to Reuven, let's say? Im Omar hu Omar li chayav ani lo. If he testifies that Shimon himself told me I owe money to Reuven, o ish ploni shu kasher v'neman Omar li shu chayav, or if he says, well, my friend who I trust implicitly told me that Shimon owes money to Reuven, lo Omar klum, his words are null and void. Ad sheyomar shehu ba'atzmo ra'a shehilvelo. The definition of a kosher witness is that he has to say, I personally witnessed Shimon borrowing money from Reuven. O sheyomar b'fanai hodolo shehu chayav. Or if he says that in my presence, Shimon acknowledged to Reuven, in my presence, that he owes Reuven money. If Shimon just said, whispered to me that he owes money to Reuven, that's irrelevant. Shimon may have said that for any number of reasons that you don't know about, you as a witness don't know, but if he says it in front of Reuven, openly, so then that's valid testimony. Then we dismiss the first witness, bring in the second witness, and we check him as well. Im hayid kamo chaveiro Nosim v'nosim b'davar v'gomer nadin. If his testimony is equivalent to the first witness, his story is the same, so then we deliberate. We as judges deliberate over the matter, and we come to a conclusion. V'im ha'edim omrim edusan mechuvenes b'lashon echad mamish. But what if the witnesses use the exact same language? In other words, there's some reason to suspect that they're working off of a script. So yesh lachush shemeshakrim uve'etza echas kivnu l'shonim. Then there's reason to suspect that they've colluded to work off of a script and to lie. B'tzarech lachkor v'lidrosh osam, and then that requires us to cross-examine them further. In other words, we have to try and discover whether or not there's an effort to lie. Ein makablim edus ela b'yom. We only hear testimony about financial cases during the day, or corporal or what's capital cases during the day. That's not always the case, but in most cases we can only accept their testimony during the day. Vim kibeluha balayla ein danim al pi osa kabbalah. And if we heard their testimony at nighttime, we cannot adjudicate based on that testimony alone. Mishum dahavale kedin she'ein danim balayla, because then it becomes like a judgment that was made at night, and we're not allowed to rule sak halacha at night as in a beis din. Yeah, but that's well, I don't know if that's the reason. I don't know. I don't know. It could be that there's less, maybe like Paul says, there's less clarity at night. It's since this is a vital component of the adjudication, is the acceptance of testimony, and you're not allowed to adjudicate at night, you're not allowed to accept witnesses at night. Mihuim kiblu alehem balei hadinim lekabel hedus balayla, mekablu mafilu lechatchila. If the litigants, however, give permission for the judges to accept the testimony at nighttime, they can sign a waiver, and if they sign the waiver, then we can actually hear testimony at night.
The city treat this anyway, was just specifically towards people we have a bit we don't trust to start with, because it starts to be belittling and public talk, and we keep saying you can public talk over your father, like, so here we're treating.
No, it's a very valid question. Do we have to do this process of instilling or intimidating the witnesses with a Talmud Chacham? I don't know. Maybe we're allowed to dispense with it because it's implicit. Could be. Okay. Right. Unless the litigants sign a waiver. Right. Right. It could be just because there's less clarity, or people are tired at night. And what? There's a mitzvah to learn at night. The Hagisa bo yomam balayla.
To the night, as opposed to expecting the night to entirety on points. So that's the design.
Not sure. Okay. You never know. Yeah. So I think maybe we'll hold it here for today. Let me wish you all a good Shabbos. And Shabbat Shalom. We'll pick it up, Mirza Hashem, on Monday.